So this is Indivisible Marin State of Play, June 2026. I'm Susan Morgan. I'm the founder and director. And the State of Play is something that it's a series really that we've been running since the 22 midterms. And Lori has led it all along, but it's a very popular series because it's a way that we can all stay in touch with what are the key races, and they change, of course, throughout an important election cycle. So Lori will be continuing to host these meetings every month or two throughout the rest of the year. Next slide, please. And we are getting a lot of new members, which is wonderful. So for their benefit, I'll just take a few minutes to give you a snapshot of Indivisible Marin. Our mission today and our mission since January of 2027 is taking action to create a more just, caring, and inclusive America. We now number over 12,000, actually nearly 13,000 members. And just to clarify, what we call member is someone that has signed up and is now on our mailing list. We have about 40% of those members are in Marin. About 30% are in California outside of Marin, and another 30 scattered throughout states around the country. And our work can be divided into these categories. I mean, there's other things we do, but these are the primary categories. In election years, it's a big focus for us. Doing the voter outreach work to elect Democrats to both chambers of Congress as well as to the White House in a presidential election year. We don't tend to get involved in state or local elections. We're really focusing on the federal elections. Then advocacy with our elected officials. As most of you likely know, as part of Indivisible, that's really the central tenet of Indivisible National and the entire Indivisible movement, is that our power as citizens, we can really magnify through our relationships with our elected officials. They're paid to listen to us, so we have their ear. So we are always encouraging people to be in touch with their elected officials about issues they care about. Resisting. This is something that is more or less relevant in given years, and certainly in 25 and 26, it has been highly relevant. And we do work on the local organizing to support protests as well as vulnerable populations, such as the immigrant community. And then underpinning all of this, we try to provide education, training, support to empower our volunteers in all of these areas. We have a fabulous leadership team. There's 6 of us on the steering committee. The steering committee makes the strategic decisions, but we also have another nearly 20 people that are part of our broader leadership team that are supporting the programs, the support staff. They support the efforts in all kinds of ways. And we're lucky that a lot of the people in our leadership team come from different professional backgrounds, have different skill sets. So we really, really bring a lot to our work here at Indivisible Marin. Very grateful to all of the leaders. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you all for coming today. It's finally here. We finally have this election to talk about. I'm really excited to be here and to present the first of what will be monthly calls. And we'll be following the same agenda in each meeting. We'll talk about the 5 major dynamics that go into a campaign, the electorate, fundraising, spend most of our time on the candidates and the races themselves. We'll also be touching on election security issues and then talk about volunteerism. And Susan will be covering that section today for us. And then we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. And I'm also happy to stay over a little bit later if people still have questions that don't get answered. Before we get into that agenda, I want to cover some basic sort of foundational ideas around the midterms, because we do a lot of comparisons with elections. We're coming off a very different kind of election with the presidential in 2024. So we're seeing a lot of comparisons down to 2018, because that was the last wave election that we had. And there are a lot of similarities, but a couple of differences that we should touch on. And the main one being that the electorate is different. We're not the same electorate. We're much more polarized than we were in 2018. And also, we don't have nearly as many races this year, exactly half as many races in the House as we had in 2018. So although our goals are the same, we have a little bit less to work with. But there are some basic ideas that do stay the same. The minority party has an advantage in the midterms. The presidential party, no matter who it is, no matter what the situation, always has a problem in the midterms. So that will work to our advantage. And midterms are a lower turnout election usually without that president on the ballot. And especially without Trump on the ballot, we are seeing lower turnout. So that too will work to our advantage. The calendar is different. We're already seeing longer primary seasons that can be quite intense, short general election runways. That time between the primary and the general election can be quite short in some states. Here in California, we've gone from March to June. And are seeing sort of the ramifications of that right now. And there are implications for the parties. This gives parties a chance to move their electorate into different areas. Maybe we'll be moving them younger, less establishment. We've seen the Republicans struggle with trying to move their party more mainstream or more MAGA. But this is a chance for parties to have more in-depth conversations and just deeper, longer periods of time to change the direction of their party. It has implications for our candidates. If you are a candidate that has been through a bruising long primary and you win, you're going to come out of it with significantly less money and a divided base and a short period of time to go up against your opponent. If you are someone who isn't challenged in a primary, you can spend that time collecting money and working with your supporters to be a very cohesive unit. So depending on which side you're on, it can be a plus or a minus. For volunteers, that affects us too. We are doing a lot of work pre-primary to just get people to the polls, because we don't, from out of state or out of district, go into a primary and support one candidate over another. But now suddenly we are going to be part of that process. We're going to be working to support candidates that are struggling to maybe bring their party together. So we'll support them regardless of who they are or what positions they stand for. We don't have the ability to pick and choose the ones we'd like to work for because our margins are so narrow this year. So we'll be out there supporting everybody, no matter who is elected. A couple of things about polls. We all love them. I love them. Most of them are pretty terrible. We've got a few good ones out there. The ones that we talk about in this call will be the strong ones, so it may not always be what you're reading about out there. I recommend the New York Times. They have a great section on preferred pollsters, but we're basically looking for pollsters that print their methodology, that spend a lot of time trying to create a polling sample that matches what they're going to see in November. We don't want sample sizes that are created to favor one candidate or another. We're also going to look for polls that are held a little bit later in the year. There's still a lot of undecided vote right now, and that's going to probably overcome any advantage that a particular candidate has. Maybe 30% of that sample may not even know who they want to vote for yet. So having a small lead doesn't really matter very much. And then we'll also consider margins of error. And polls aren't very helpful in close elections, which is what we'll be focusing on, because the margin of error is usually greater than the margin between a candidate. So we'll look for them. I like to look at trajectories. Are they getting stronger over time? Are they kind of sitting in the same place? But that absolute number isn't all that helpful. Senate polling is also much better than House polling. So Senate polling will be something we'll talk about a little bit more. And then I'll try to end each section with something that we need to watch for, something that we're following that is really concrete, that we'll follow up with on the next meeting. So starting out with the electorate, that's you and me, that's the voters. How are we feeling? There's so many polls out there. There's enthusiasm polls and presidential approval polls and how much I intend on voting polls. None of those actually correlate with a winning candidate. We vote for candidates and parties that we don't approve of all the time, especially on the Republican side, Because right now, to vote for the other side means crossing over a barrier that for a lot of people just is just too big to cross. So although his approval rating is quite low, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to go out and vote for a Democrat. Enthusiasm polls don't translate into turnout. We were the most enthusiastic team or party in 2024, and we did not turn out. I like to use the generic poll because it is truly generic. It just asks people whether you would rather vote, whether you would rather have a Democrat or a Republican in charge. It takes away a lot of the subjective and behavioral parts of polling, and it is one of the few that actually does correlate with the popular vote. Or in this sense, since it's a midterm this year, we would call that the congressional ballot. And in 2018, we were leading in this poll by about 8 to 10 points at this point, and we are the same this year. So that's a really good sign. I would like to see it get higher because our margins are thinner this year. So we're going to be watching to see if this poll goes up over the next few months. There are truly dozens of congressional generic polls out there right now. They range anywhere from like 3 or 4 points all the way to 15. And that's not helpful when you see such a wide range, but I'm using the Emerson poll here. It's been around for a long time. It's very well respected. It's sort of a standard. They've been doing this for multiple cycles, and you can just see on this chart how we've come up really in the last year, and we're right now at that 10 points that we need to be at. But the best thing to look at as far as the electorate goes is how have we actually been voting? And we know that we've been overperforming really since he was elected in almost every single election across the country at every level. We can look at 2018 where we overperformed about 10%, had almost that much of a popular vote. In 2022, we were the president's party and we lost. We were underperforming in elections, and of course, we lost the House that year. This year, we're at record highs, over 13% now on overperformance. And that just means how many points that particular election was beneficial for us over previous years. It doesn't translate to us getting 13 points in every single election from now on, because some of these were very low level elections. They aren't the same as a House election or a Senate election. Most experts that I've heard are saying that Democrats should expect anywhere from a 5 to 10 point bounce over 2024, which will win us a lot of elections. A bit on fundraising. We look at the FEC quarterly filings. These are from March. Next time when we meet, we'll have the June ones. And I don't expect that there's going to be a huge amount of shock there. We are tremendously ahead in candidate campaigns. We always are. Democrats donate to their candidates. Republicans don't usually do that. So we're far ahead there. That allows us to build out a ground game, start our campaigning, reserve ad times, all those things that we've traditionally done really well at. The next source of money is party committees, like the DNC, the arm of the party that works in the House, the DCCC, and then the DSCC for the Senate. These committees are very important because they come in and they help out those primary candidates that are coming into their general election without a lot of money, newer candidates that don't have the donor base yet. They help out over the year as new candidates might materialize that need extra help. So very, very important. We were worried that we'd be grossly behind with this, and we actually aren't. We are behind, but not by very much. And very, very encouraging that we've been able to catch up in that kind of spending. And one example is we came out of 2024 knowing that we grossly underperformed, right, in digital media and Spanish language programming. Was one of the things that we just never were able to catch up on. And the last media reporting all this is that not only have we caught up, but we have put record investments in both digital and Spanish language programming this year. So one of the reasons that we've been winning elections is that we are actually outspending now the Republicans in this area. Where we always fall behind, though, are those PACs and the super PACs, that dark money, those ominous ads that we see in elections. We just can never keep up with this. And we aren't this year either. The only good thing to say is that I think it's really under discussion and controversial as to how much this money really makes a difference. They've already shown that the television ads don't have much of an impact. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement in this area over the next few cycles as to where this money is best spent. But regardless, we will be outspent in this area. we'll be watching for those quarterly reports to come out in June, and we'll talk about them in July. There's also a Supreme Court decision that may or may not be coming out this year. It's the National Republican Senate Committee. They have filed a lawsuit that's now reached the Supreme Court that's going to have some repercussions on how party committees are able to spend their money. And one of the things you'll read in the news is that Democrats have not a lot of cash on hand. That is true because we've already made the investments. The Republicans are hanging back and not spending their money yet, partly because they're waiting for this decision, but also the maps are much worse than they were expecting. And I think they're just trying to make sense of where they want to spend their money. It's changed so quickly and in such great, in so many races. So let's get to the candidates. That's, I know, what everybody wants to hear about. Before I start that, I want to just go over the ratings that the Cook report uses. And that's the ratings group that I use. They're nonpartisan. They have the highest rate of accuracy in elections and are considered the gold standard. You'll also always hear their name tossed around out there. They do most of their work behind a paywall. So I am behind that and I'm able to bring that information to you. They use 4 categories. And we'll be bouncing candidates back and around this year about this. The first category is a solid race. If you're a solid Republican or a Democrat, you're very safe. You're going to win your elections by 20 points or more. You have massive voter registration advantages, and you basically don't campaign. You are really, at this point in our politics, they are more accountable to their party leadership than they are to the voters that put them into office. And it's one of the reasons we have such a polarized country. And most of the races in this country on both sides are in this category. If you're a likely candidate, you are safe too on election day. You're going to win your race at maybe 10 to 20 points. Most of the Democrats won't really have to campaign this year. The Republicans might have some light campaigning that they need to do, but these races are all considered safe on election day. They never flip. The lean races are the ones that we'll be talking a lot about today. For Democrats this year, they're fairly safe because they're expected to win between 5 and 10 points. And so when they get a little bit of a bounce there, they're in good shape. But for the Republicans, they are very vulnerable. And this is where we've been able to make a lot of gains this year and are continuing to make gains, are these lean races. However, for both parties, they have to fully campaign. They have to raise the money. They need to do the work. They need the volunteers. They may not reach out nationally as much, but if you live in one of these states or one of these districts, this should be your first priority because they can't win if they don't have that local volunteer turnout. But the main races that we hear about are what we call toss-up races, and they're the ones that are won by less than 5 points or less. These races are considered 50-50 for whatever reason. They may have a 50-50 voter registration proportion. They may have a very popular candidate that's maybe able to overcome a party problem. There may be a scandal on the other side, but for whatever reason, they are considered toss-ups and they are entirely dependent on election day turnout. Which campaign, which party turns out the most voters is going to win. And they cannot do it without national help. So all of these races involve all of us working out of district, out of state, coming in to make the phone calls and send the postcards. Which party does this better will win. So this is the Senate. We'll start here because it's so much easier and simpler since there's less of them. If you take away all the blue arrows, you'll see the way this looked about a year ago. Not a whole lot of seats that were even up to even flip at all. But what's most striking is if you look in the toss-up column, there were no opportunities for us to flip any seats in the Senate. So all we could do is sort of tread water. But then the blue wave started and you can see how many races now have been moved to us. No races have become more secure for Republicans. They're all on our side. And this is what a blue wave looks like. Today, the map looks much different. We actually have 3 races now that are safe for us, and we have a lot more opportunities to pick up seats. The numbers are simple. We have 47 right now. That means we would need to flip 4 new seats in order to get to 51. To do that, we would have to hold the vulnerable seats that we have in Georgia with Jon Ossoff, and then 2 open seat opportunities, Michigan and New Hampshire, because of Senate retirements. But we have 6 places that we could conceivably pick up a seat. Iowa, North Carolina, Maine, Ohio, Texas, and Alaska. What are we going to be watching for? The polls are helpful, a little early for some of them. And then we do have a situation in Maine. We're waiting for their primary on Tuesday to see how that plays out. But this is the way it looks right now. I want to say one word about a 50-50 Senate, though. I heard this on a call the other day, and I thought it was so interesting. We would be very frustrated at 50, but it is possible that we would get to that number. There's a couple of things that would work to our advantage, though, in a 50-50. Obviously, we would rather have the majority, but at 50, there's a power sharing agreement that comes out of the committee, so we'd have a lot more power coming out of committees, and Vance would have to break the ties, and that's the last position in the world he wants to be in, being that he wants to run for the presidency in 2028. So this would create a real opportunity for us to have a tremendous amount of power in the Senate. So 51 is the goal, but 50 would be interesting. Where are the races? Well, it's falling out better and better for us all the time. Two of our holds, Georgia and New Hampshire, are already leaning towards us. And on election day, this means if we do all the work and we do the full campaigning there, we should be able to win. We already have a flip that's been moved into our column. That's North Carolina, Roy Cooper there. So early polling there is pretty encouraging for us. We only have one seat that we have to defend, and that's an open seat in Michigan. It will be challenging because it's in August. And it's a very, very competitive primary on our side. So we'll be doing a tremendous amount of work in the fall in Michigan, getting caught up. But all of the other campaigns are in full swing. We have two opportunities to flip a seat in Maine with Graham Plattner and Ohio with Sherrod Brown, who's very familiar to all of us. And then three possibilities. They're a little stretched out. Mary Peltola in Alaska, but she has won there before. Josh Turek was just nominated this week in Iowa. And then we have the James Tallarico Paxton race in Texas. All of these are the exact matchups that we wanted. We got the ideal matchup in every single election. So looking very, very strong there. When I move to the House, you'll see the one difference with that is that in the House, we don't have to win anything in the lean Republican column to take the House. It's much easier. That's why people say it's easier for us to win the House than the Senate. These are going to be very tough races to win. We can do it, but the House is a little bit smoother, and I'll show you why. In the House, we have the blue wave. It looks just like it did for the Senate map, but on the other hand, we've got the redistricting that's happened. We have new maps now in California and Utah that helped us, but a slew of them in Republican states that have gained seats for them. We have some of 3 seats that weren't able to follow through. So it is done. We don't have anything more out there. There's no more court cases. We know what the final numbers are. And before I go to them, I just want to point to the fact that it's not over yet for 2028. The Democrats are planning a massive redistricting effort across the country, maybe up to 10 to 15 new seats for us, because they've removed and basically made it legal for parties to redistrict along political party lines to benefit a political party. That's what the Supreme Court race decision said, and that's what we're going to do. Republicans are fairly gerrymandered out. They could squeeze a few more seats out of that first line of states. They're going to redistrict in Georgia and pick up a few seats, but we are going to hold most of the cards going forward. All right, this is the map for the Democrats, and you can see everything has moved. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's way too many. Over 36 seats have moved to Democrats this year. When you have a gerrymander, you're moving one seat from a solid Democrat to a solid Republican or vice versa. We aren't creating solid seats here, but what we are creating with the blue wave here is just like the Senate. We've created enormous amounts of opportunity for us to flip. So when you take those forces, the blue wave and all the gerrymandering, what are you coming up with? Well, right now we have 215 seats. That puts us 3 seats short. If we were using these same maps that we're all living through right now, there was no question that we would take back the House, and not only take it back, but in a landslide. The new maps have taken that possibility away. We can still win. It will be a narrower majority, but we can still do it. we would need now to flip 9 seats. We'll be coming into the election sketching out at 209 Democrats. 9 seats. In 2018, we flipped 75% of our toss-up races. That's a huge blue wave. If we do that this year, we'll take back 10 and take back the House. Likely, if we can get that a little higher, we'll take a few more, but it will be a narrow majority. So to win, in summary, we need to hold 4 seats and we need to flip 9 out of the 14 available. And again, we could even squeeze more out of that, but that's a very doable map in the type of energy that we're seeing right now. We don't have polling to help us sense how we're doing over the next few months, but we can watch that generic poll. If it goes up, we're winning more seats. And then we'll follow the Cook report and see if they're removing any more seats around. If you're wondering where these seats are, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but the red ones are the flip opportunities. Then we have 4 that we have to hold: Florida, Ohio, Texas, and Washington. And then these lean Republican seats up here, these are also now in play for us. Our lean Democratic seats we're going to pay attention to them. If we do the full campaign work there, we should be able to win these seats on election day. They should not be at risk. In California, for those of you that are here, we have 3 races that fall into this category. New York also has 3. We'll once again be the 2 busiest states in the country. We'll be working in 13, which is Adam Gray, down in Southern California, 45 and 48. And then we have our major flip opportunity in California, 22. But lots of places to work. If you live in any of these states, this will be your top priority. All right, before I move on, I want to cover just a few things about state races, because there are some major statewide races that are happening this year, and we won't be working in them per se because we concentrate on federal, but I certainly want to point them out because they will make the news. Then they have a lot of implications for 2028 as far as election integrity and security goes, and redistricting. If you have a triplex, that means you own the governorship, the attorney general, and the secretary of state, or whoever runs your elections. And we need to defend this triplex that we have, especially in Arizona and Michigan, because those are presidential battleground states. We have an opportunity to gain back Nevada, and this will put us in a much more secure position in 2028. A trifecta is owning the governor, the state house, and the state senate. And this also has implications for election laws, but it also has implications for redistricting and whatever states are going to try to squeeze out in the next couple of years. We're lucky here. We don't have to defend anything. We're very secure, but we have opportunities across the country to pick up whatever it is that we're missing so that we will come into this with a strong state government to fight back against whatever Trump is going to be pulling in the next couple of years. And then just out of interest, we have Democratic governors that are either retiring or running for a second term in these states. Again, Arizona and Michigan stand out because they're presidential battlegrounds, but we would like to keep the governor in Democratic hands in these states. And once again, from a statewide level, it is Arizona and Michigan that have the biggest elections this year. Right. Election security is something I get asked about a lot, and I wish it wasn't on this list, but it is. It's beyond the scope of this call to go into real detail about each state, because election security is a locality issue. Each county may handle it differently, each state. But the main thing to take away is that it's not just foreign interference in the Trump administration we have to worry about this year. We are seeing local interference from local governments, from state governments. We're seeing tremendous amounts of federal interference in just about every department that they have. We're seeing individual and groups forming to interfere in elections, just general people interfering and using a lot of intimidation. We've seen political violence already in our elections this year. So a lot to worry about. Can we count on the courts? I'm not sure that we can. I hope that we can, but it's certainly a murky area. What I can tell you is that there is a tremendous amount of work that's being done across the country, state by state, county by county. A couple of things, if this is something that really interests you, I encourage you to contact your own local Democratic parties. I didn't even realize this, but our party here in California, which we're a very blue state, and we have a state executive branch that's very strong on election security, but they have their own personal department just within our state party that also handles and is a source for election security issues. But the Brennan Center is a national group that is sort of the brain trust for election security. They run a lot of great calls and are really the clearinghouse for information. Also our Indivisible national group, I just heard about this yesterday on a call or Thursday on a call. They are forming their own voter protection program that we will have access to. It will be up and running in red states that have battleground races. So we'll have a lot going for us. There's literally more groups than you can count. We are paying attention to it, and it is starting to centralize. Groups are starting to work together to be able to communicate back and forth. For those of us in California, I wanted to touch on this because it got lost last week with our primary election, but Senate Bill 73 passed. Governor Newsom signed it into law last week. It's a lot, has a lot of actions in it. But I want to just touch on the two main ones. It's going to require a warrant for law enforcement to access any voting materials at all or a voting site. And this sort of came out of one of the governor candidates who actually went in as a sheriff and took voting materials. So this would require a court order, a warrant to be able to do this. It also is going to prohibit all local and federal law enforcement presence at any voting location unless there is a public health emergency of some kind or a public safety emergency. And one of the other things this bill does is it sets up a chain of command from the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, and local election officials so that they have a clear communication channel to communicate directly with him if they're having issues. So this is sort of seen as a prototype for election security bills across the country. It will get challenged in court, but as of right now, it is the law of the land for November. All right, before I turn this over to Susan, I wanted to touch on the last section of the things that are going to impact our election. And this is you and me. This is the voter outreach. Hopefully, we've made the case that voter turnout in those toss-up elections is entirely dependent on the campaign and the volunteer turnout. Volunteer turnout equals voter turnout. We do this through early, regular, and broad voter contact. You need to hit all three things. We need to be there early, which we have been, especially here in California. We've been doing this work since January. It needs to be regular, meaning we need to contact our voters multiple times in multiple different ways. And broad, meaning we need to be able to contact the majority of our voters. We have effective programs, but if we don't have enough volunteers, we can't reach enough of the voters for them to work enough to bring in those additional votes that we need. So early, regular, broad voter contact, a lot of volunteers. When we're doing this, we've been doing this actually since January, but now we're into the summer phase. So we're past the primaries here. We're going to be talking to our voters about the candidates themselves, connecting them over issues and asking for their support. In the fall, we'll be working more in that traditional get out the vote, helping people with their ballots. So it's traditional work, nothing really new, but we have obviously a tremendous amount of places that we need to work. For us, for Indivisible Marin, since we don't have a Senate race here in our own state, we will be rotating through all of these 9 crucial Senate races. And it really depends on the tactic, but we will have opportunities for all of them. And in our website, we have ways for you to connect to work for any of the Senate candidates there. On the House side, we will be concentrating on California because we are one of those battleground House states. But again, there are extra resources for you if you want to work somewhere else, and that's on our website. But for us, we'll be concentrating on Adam Gray and Derek Tran. Those are our incumbent candidates here in the Central Valley, and Tran is in Southern California. And then we will be working for our challengers, our newly elected people. We don't know who that is yet in 22. They're still counting ballots there, but Marnie Van Wilpert is our new candidate down in 48, and we'll be working for her. We'll be doing this through postcarding, phone banking, texting, canvassing, and fundraising. I'm going to turn this over to Susan to go into great detail about that, how that's going to work. But what I can tell you is that all of these, if done correctly and done in large numbers with large numbers of volunteers, can be the difference in an election. In fact, it was that exact effort that got Adam Gray and Derek Tran elected. Together, they only won their races by 800 votes. And they are two of those, of that, of the only people that we added to the Congress last in 2024.
So as Lori has laid out so well, we have an excellent chance to take back the House and a real chance to take back the Senate, but only if we do the work. So Indivisible Marin is very dedicated to success here, and we have created Turnout to Win, which is a strategic, impact-driven campaign to take back Congress in November. The concept is that by increasing people power, that's us, the volunteers, we will win more votes, generate turnout to take back Congress. I don't know if any of you are thinking this, but some people, some Democrats might be thinking, why do we have to work so hard? You know, Trump's popularity ratings are, tanking, and there's got so much momentum. Well, we believe that we can have zero complacency heading into the midterms, largely because we know that they will try to cheat in multiple nefarious ways. Some that we can predict, some that we may not be able to predict. And of course, there are multiple forms of guardrails to stop that. We've got election officials and secretaries of state and all kinds of and legal groups and lawsuits. So this will be a multifaceted effort to prevent them from this cheating. But when it really comes down to it, the best defense against that is a massive Dem turnout. A massive Dem turnout that makes the margins such that there aren't narrow wins. Let's not look to win narrowly because those could be challenged. We want to win, in huge enough margins that it can't be questioned, essentially. So that is essentially overperforming on turnout more than we have done in the past to be assured of taking back both chambers. Next slide, please. Involved in Turnout to Win, hopefully all of us. The fact that you guys are here today means that you are amongst the minority of Americans who are super engaged and committed to this work. And we've done some rough calculations and have determined that to reach our goals, we need about 500,000 such Americans who will really commit to this and commit to an average of about an hour a week over the next 17 weeks, starting in July, to make this happen. So here at Indivisible Marin, while we certainly aren't going to turn out 500,000 people, we want to do our part to turn out as many of our volunteers and have you guys be part of that, those special forces that are going to really make this happen. So I'm not going to get into too many of the details about the Turnout to Win specifics in this meeting. This is really kind of a prequel, but the next steps for people that want to be involved in this way is to attend our Turnout to Win kickoff, which will be on 6/28. And at that meeting, we'll give you all the particulars, all the ways to get rolling. If you can't make that meeting, it's okay. Or if you actually want to get started before the 28th, we'll provide you with some links where you can sign up right now to join the Turnout to Win team. And or go to our website. Lori and I have spent a lot of time revamping the website. So when you go there now, indivisibleMarin.org, you look for elect in the nav bar, You'll see all of the details, not only about Turnout to Win, but also about specific volunteer opportunities that you can start tomorrow. Um, there will be more opportunities starting in July. There's stuff we can do now, but given that the primaries are still happening and some of the candidates are really just getting their general election campaigns going, there will be many more opportunities when we get to July. So anyway, those are our asks that you hopefully will join us on the 28th. And if you can't join us then, go to the website, sign up for the Turnout to Win team, check out the opportunities, get working as soon as you want. And I guess in closing, I just, want to say that we simply have to pull this off. We have to do this. We cannot we cannot allow 2 more years of Trump ruling our country unconstrained by Congress. So let's frickin' go, everyone. We can do this. We can do the work. And together, through this program, well, you'll have support, you'll have camaraderie. We're going to make it fun. We can do this.